October is here, and that means all eyes in the triathlon world turn towards Hawaii for the Ironman World Championships. I'm Andrew from TriDot, and as the world of Ironman heads to the Big Island, we wanted to bring the Kona Experience from Hawaii to you. Today I had the privilege of interviewing two of our standout TriDot coaches who have each qualified for and conquered the most famous race in our sport. Joining me in studio is Coach Elizabeth James. She made the transition from runner to triathlete in 2012 and has been coaching triathletes with TriDot for almost 4 years. She's a 4-time finisher who qualified for Kona with her first age group win at Ironman Chattanooga. She went on to race her first World Championships just last year. Elizabeth, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I am very much looking forward to it.
And coming to us all the way from the Big Island of Hawaii is TriDot legend Kurt Madden. He's a pioneer of the sport and an 8-time Kona finisher. He has 3 top 10 finishes at the Ironman World Championships, and he is a 3-time top-ranked age group Ironman all-world athlete. And as if 140.6 miles isn't enough, he is also a 2-time Ultraman world champion. Hey Kurt, thanks for taking some time to talk with us today.
Thank you so much. It's great to join TriDot.
Now, Elizabeth and I are very much landlocked here at TriDot headquarters in Texas. So please tell us, how is beautiful Hawaii today?
Well, first of all, I apologize that you're maybe in a spot that's a little bit difficult as we speak. Conversely, on my end, as we talk about the place to be, I would say, knowing what I know, with a big world championship coming up, this is definitely the place to be in the entire universe. Kona does not get any better as far as hosting this unbelievable event. It's hard for me to even say this, but I've been coming to Kona for the past 38 years, and what doesn't change is the beauty, the culture, the ohana, the wind, the beautiful water, going out there on the bike course, and also just knowing what this place is going to be like on race day out there on the Queen Cam Highway on Alii Drive too, just running, but also just getting around the island and just tapping into good memories of being here. And I think if I would say if I had a second home, I think I'm in Hawaii so much that this is definitely my second home. And then on top of that, you throw in the mix of all the international people. I think there's so many different languages I've heard this week. It's very humbling, but it's also very exciting to know this is like not just a California event. This is worldwide now. This is the place where everyone in the mix, everyone that wants to be a part of this unbelievable experience is here in Kona this week.
As a legend in the sport, Kurt, you've raced against, big names like Dave Scott, Mark Allen. You've been on the course with Julie Moss. And so from training and racing in those glory days of triathlon, can you give me maybe one of your favorite stories to tell?
Stories and memories are really, really key. And probably the one that I would remember most is if I go back to the race, October of 1982, because the race had gone from 1980. It was on Oahu. That was definitely in the primitive days. That it was a $20 entry fee. There were 99 people. Your crew followed you throughout the Ironman course that was set up over there on Oahu. They didn't block the roads. We had actually scales that you had to step up on. That was pretty moving. That race from 1980. In fact, I will definitely post some of the rules and the regulations from the 1980 race. But I think, moving it up to 1982, there were, I think, 1,100 people in the race. It was really more of a California event. Keep in mind, at that point in time, for some of our listeners that don't remember, something called the internet was actually not even around yet. It was being talked about maybe with our military. So it was definitely, word got out, but I knew that I had done a lot of training. I think it was old school thinking back then. It was real simple. It was like, hey, we're going to bike 400 miles this week. We're going to run 70 miles, and we'll swim 25,000 yards. And I had met Mark Allen about 6 months before this race, and Mark's real low key. It's like, I met him on a bike ride, and we were up in North County in San Diego. Say, I'm Mark, I'm Kurt. And, we started talking and went on the bike ride, and it was about a 50 miler, and we came back, and he said, so what do you think? And I go, what do I think, Mark? I said, this is beyond thinking. I said, you are a natural. I said, you just have to go ahead and show up, and I'm very confident you're going to do well. because Mark definitely is just I think he's a natural athlete, but he's very, very gifted and he works hard. So I was kind of pulling for Mark a little bit and hoping he would do well. And, the race kicks off and had a good swim and, had a decent bike. And, all of a sudden I got out by Avi and I look over and it's like, well, I'm saying, where's Mark? And they're going, Mark had a mechanical issue. And I think what happened is his derailleur actually just completely broke near Javi, and that put him on the side of the road. In the meantime, Dave is Dave, and Dave is a warrior, and Dave is just pounding. I mean, he's just not backing off. And it was so interesting because, Dave was really good at playing those mind games. And I remember that we used to have our carbo loading party down at the Sheraton that was the Kona Surf. And you can imagine on Alii Drive, everyone's going down to the carbo loading party. So Dave was really good. What he would do is he would make sure that one lane road or 2 lane road in Alii was completely filled with cars. And about an hour before, when he knew everyone was going down to the carbo loading party, he'd get out there in the smallest little shorts he could put on his hot body. And he was just ripped. And he would do these interval repeats. And people at dinner, that's all they were talking about. Oh, did you see Dave Scott? He must have been running 15 miles. And did you see his quads? And did you see this? And did you see that? So he really had everyone kind of beat before the race started. But going back to the race, I came off the bike 20th. And for me, I was a little disappointed. But I think, again, looking to what TriDot preaches and teaches is, be a little conservative on the bike. And I kept moving up. And I was heading out to the airport. And pretty far out there, and Dave Scott was just rolling coming back. There was a downhill section, and he went by me, and the look on his face, I think I will always remember, never forget, just the look of he was on a mission. It was mission critical. He was just rolling down that highway and going and pushing hard, and I'm saying, wow, in my entire life, that moment right there to see Dave do as well as he did, and Mark again wasn't even around, was something that I'll remember forever. And for me, I think just continuing to move up, that I was just very consistent, and it kept moving up and passing people. So for me to finish 6th overall in the world, I was like, whoa, I was just over the top. And again, keep in mind, there wasn't a lot of technology back then. I think it was a lot of heart, it was a lot of grit, it was a lot of just putting it out there. So I think that race in 1982 for me is probably my fondest memory.
Every trip to Kona begins hundreds of miles away from the island, preparing for the race to come. Kurt, walk us through the physical and mental preparations that you do to get ready for the race.
Well, again, that is always the question. Once you do it, you're just tired, you're beat up, saying, why did I do this to myself? But it was always worth it. So really the first step for me is I know that as I plan out my season and utilize TriDot, I know that's very imperative to kind of position myself to qualify sooner rather than later. That always gives me peace of mind. But really it's more of a lifestyle. It's embracing everything that I know I need to do in the journey. And the journey is really the story. It's not the race per se. That's kind of the icing on the cake. But it's really starting my season to make sure that I'm assessing, taking stock of where I am physically, to make sure I've allowed full recovery, to make sure that I'm definitely following the plan. I'm trusting the process to get some good high-intensity sessions in early, start to build on the volume, start to plan out my races, that I'm using them as stepping stones to qualifying for Kona, and assessing myself to make sure that I'm always in a situation where I'm ready for the race, knowing that I've got my A races, I have my B races, and my C races. But, again, I have to juggle being a dad to a certain extent. My children have moved on years ago, but still being a dad, being the best husband I can be. I've had Kelly, my wife, we've been married for 40 plus years, and that's very, very special to me. And then my full-time job as a CEO that operates charter schools throughout California, and then serving and coaching athletes. And then I've got to find a way to say, hey, I've got 15 to 20 hours, some weeks in the early season, maybe 10 hours to get all that stuff done. So that's kind of the physical part, and then continuing to monitor myself as I go through the season. I think the mental part is actually probably something that we don't spend enough time on. And I know as an athlete and as a coach that I work on that mental approach to training, to understand that there are going to be some tough sessions, to understand there's going to be some easy sessions, but trying to really visualize myself at Kona. And I think in doing that, again, coming clean with my TriDot tribe here, that there's not one day that I don't think about Kona. I don't know if that's an OCD, but I think it's a good place to be in my head, knowing that as I'm racing, that I'm racing with a desire to have the best race possible. To get to Kona is always the ultimate. And then once I get here, to say, wow, I'm going to cherish every single moment out there on the course. I will definitely hit some dark spots, but really have fun. Just take it all in.
Elizabeth, you made a comment about how Kurt actually gave you some advice for your first time going to the island. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So having Kurt's experience and knowledge about Kona and just about racing has been an extremely wonderful thing for me. I know that I leaned a lot on him in my preparations all of last year as I was preparing for Kona, and just getting his advice about, training throughout the entire season, and how the race schedule should look, and, what accommodations I need to make and what considerations I should have as I kind of prepared for the big dance there. I remember one of the things that, Kurt, you told me is to really, concentrate on the training, but also be aware of overtraining going into that event. That, a lot of athletes have this idea that, oh my gosh, it's the big dance. I've got to be in the best shape I've ever been in. And they can often take that too far. And so, yes, it is the big stage. It is, all eyes in the triathlon space on this one event. But at the same point, I needed to keep in mind what had worked for me to get to the starting line and make sure that I didn't take things overboard, and I still was able to honor the commitments that I had to, my work responsibilities and my family. And, you talk about a partner that's just there for you and understanding. I also feel so very fortunate that my husband, Charles, is 100% behind me in this. And, with his support, your guidance, the guidance of Coach John, I feel like my mental and physical preparation was on point, and there were a lot of key things to consider.
Folks, I'm talking with two seriously experienced Ironman athletes, and they both use TriDot to prepare for all their races. Whether you're looking to toe the start line at a local sprint or gunning for a Kona qualifying spot, training with TriDot can help you get there. To get started, head to TriDot.com and start your free test drive today. Kurt, tell me what's going through your mind as you land in Hawaii, and how do you approach the days and weeks leading up to the race?
Mm-hmm. The landing is again, it's for me, it's something that I truly do cherish. It's something that I've done, I think, so many times throughout the years that for me, it's a great place to be. I always use that phrase that I know for sure I'm not in Kansas anymore, because from a visual aspect, you have to understand that you've come from the West Coast, you've flown for 5 hours, you're coming into the Hawaiian Islands, you're out in the middle of the Pacific, and you get off the airplane, and actually before you land, you're coming in, you're looking at this big, massive landmass, and you're looking at Mauna Kea, you're looking at Mauna Loa. It's just a huge, huge, huge chocolate sundae. I mean, did I say chocolate sundae? I should have said it's really just a big island filled with lava. But that's what it looks like visually. You'll see dark lava, you'll see light lava, and then you'll see this beautiful island that on the desert side, which I'm on, it's good and it's dry. On the other side, the Hilo side, the wet side, it's really wet. But again, Kona has 11 different climate zones. For me, as soon as I land, I think I just feel grounded. But it's like, wow, okay, it's going to be showtime here real soon. Try to build that inner confidence. But what hits you right away is the heat, the wind, the humidity. And it's like, oh my goodness, I'm definitely in Kona. And it's going to get real exciting here real soon.
Elizabeth, your first time racing Kona was just this past year. I'm actually sitting with Elizabeth right now, and she's rocking her 40 Years of Dreams Kona Ironman World Championships hat like an absolute boss. So when you landed, for your first time, your first race, what do you remember thinking?
I mean, first, you get off the plane and there's just this wall of heat that hits you. And you have the realization of like, oh my goodness, like here we are. And yes, this is just as intense as I imagined. But for me, a lot of it was just that I could not wipe the smile off my face, just knowing that, okay, I'm here. And, this next week that I'm here on the island, this is going to be something I look back on forever. And there's going to be a lot of great memories made.
The day of the World Championships, I am usually glued to the live stream all day long. The energy in the morning just seems absolutely electric. Kurt, what is it like to be in that atmosphere on race morning?
Well, on race morning, that's, boy, it is a little bit unnerving. I don't care how many times you do it. You can just pick up on the vibe. Everyone's a little bit nervous, from the rookies to the pros. Even when it's dark out there and the sun's not quite up yet, you can definitely look into people's eyes and you can see that nervousness. And I think really what it is, you're really trying to anticipate to say, am I ready? What have I missed? What could go wrong? Even the pros, it's like they're a little bit skittish. And then the rookies are just like, whoa, wait a minute. This is my first time in Kona. And again, just a lot of buzz going on. But I really try to stay very methodical on that morning. I know exactly when I'm going to get up. I'm not going to overconsume a lot of food. I'm going to get to T1 as soon as possible. The biggest concern, I think, always for triathletes is your bike, to make sure, okay, is my bike still here? Do I have a flat? Do I have an issue I've got to deal with? Make sure you're in that bathroom line right away. Make sure you're checking your bike out. Engaging in small conversation. I try to, be really kind of hang loose and keep people kind of happy and just be very positive, be upbeat, send out a real good vibe. And conversely, there's other people, they just got a little bit of edge on them. And it's like, whoa, hold on there, big boy, we're going to be okay. We got a long day out there together. But just take it all in. I mean, that moment, that hour and a half of just prepping, it's like, wow, I've worked for I've trained over 900 hours for this. So take it all in, enjoy it. And then again, make sure that I start my warm up and do not get distracted at all. I'm not there to save the world. I'm there to kind of take care of myself. So physically, just assessing myself, just breathing, taking it easy. And all of a sudden that sun comes up over the horizon and you're going, oh my goodness, there is no turning back now. And the pros are out there in the water and they're going off. And then this year the start will be different in Kona. And then once you get in that water, it's like, oh my goodness, that opens a whole different chapter.
Now I know the mass swim start is officially being retired, but you've been in there for the chaos on 8 different times. Tell us about that swim start, Kurt. Is it as crazy as it looks?
It really is. In fact, it's maybe even crazier. I would say that. A friend of mine that I've known for 38 years from Brazil, he actually swam in the, I won't say practice swim, but they kind of have a practice swim. You pay a little bit of money to get in it, and they do that the week before. But he told me that in that mass start on Sunday, he said it was just hysteria. He's a very, very strong swimmer. He won his age group and, had a great swim. But I think it's just everything that you're in a very confined space. You have to tread water. You're not quite sure when the gun's going to go off. It's like no other start you've ever had. And it's all out. You have to be able to say, I will be at threshold here in 10 seconds. And you've got to maintain that pace for as long as you can and not literally blow up, knowing there's no place to go. You can't go any faster. You can't go any slower. You can't go to the left. You can't go to the right. So this year, approaching it from kind of like an age grouping start, I'm trying to get my head around that. I'm trying to take the high road. I think that based on my times that I typically come out in about an hour, so I'm usually right in that front pack of my age group. But with this now starting way, way back, I'm going to think I'm swimming around a lot of people, but in a way it might be good if I can find someone to draft off right away. But again, I don't think my strategy will change. I've been in the water every day since I've been here this week. I know the course inside and out. I check in with the locals on tides and everything else. And I think what I will always do is just swim my very best, be at threshold, have to deal with anything, and get ready to push real hard, especially on the way back.
So Elizabeth, Kurt has gone through that swim start 8 times. You've gone through it once. What was the swim start like for you?
Well, goodness, I mean, he describes it well with lack of personal space and
2.4 miles of no
yes,
personal space.
exactly, and extremely chaotic. I mean, nobody is meaning to be malicious. It's just that when you put that many bodies together and say go, you're gonna get hit. You're gonna get kicked, and there is no personal space. And also, as Kurt was alluding to, you have the hope that it might thin out, but it just really doesn't. I mean, you've got a lot of people that are swimming at a very competitive level, and you've got the best of the best out there. And so there really isn't, swimming away from the crowd. The crowd is there, and they're there the entire time.
I know our listeners are very eager to hear all about the bike course, but first, you have to get on the bike. So real quick, Kurt, is there anything special or different about the Kona transition?
Compared to other races I've seen, I'm literally perplexed on how they're able to put so many bikes in such a small space without killing people. It's just I know they've done it again and again, but when you look at the pier like right now today, and there's nothing on it as far as T1 or T2, how they just transform it, it's just a work of art. It is. There's so many fine details. I think they take advantage of every single inch. You have to remember there's 2,500 bikes. It's a very, very tight space. And the international crowd on top of that, I think makes it even more challenging because everyone does not speak English. You have all the media there. You've got all the spectators there. You have to visualize you're coming out of, a really challenging swim. You're coming up a few steps, all of a sudden, boom, you grab your bag and you are in T1. The T1 is extremely small. So for me, it's literally a grab and go. I don't sit there and do selfies and powder up and do my fishnet stockings and things like that. I leave all that stuff behind. I just literally grab and go. I really make sure I know where my bike is. For the past several years that I've raced here, as I've come back into the sport, I know where it is. And then you have to deal with someone that's really kind of antsy and they're pushing hard to get by you. But just making sure that I get to my bike, that I have the right bike, and make sure that I'm good to go.
The 112-mile bike course in Kona is legendary, and Kurt, you know it as well as anyone. Take us through the play-by-play of each section of that course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I try to, as an athlete and as a coach, I found what's really, really beneficial and effective is just to put things in chunks or segments. I think it's good for your mind. I think it's good for your body. It gives you a chance to work towards something. And really the first 5 miles, it's beyond hectic because you've got so many people around you and you're kind of winding your way through town that you're going out and it's kind of flat, but before you know it, you're going up an incline, you're going on a steep descent, and then you're going on a long uphill. You're going to win the race in the first 5 miles. So safety is always a priority. There's a section on Kuakini Highway when you go up and you turn around, you start to come back down. That you're already hitting close to 35 miles an hour on a one-lane road, and it's again the uniformity is not very good. And then all of a sudden you make a right-hand turn up this famous Alii Drive right there road. And it's a really steep section. And what I've learned about that, it's just people don't, I think, acknowledge it enough that you could be going, say, pushing maybe 175 watts. And literally within 15 seconds, you can go to 400 watts, which at that point in the race, you don't want that to happen at all. So being in the right gears, it's very important. I think with the crowd around there, that just adds a little bit more buzz or electricity to it to think that you can push as an athlete. And then once you get to the top of the hill, literally in 2.5 minutes, you're turning left, you're heading down the infamous Queen Cam Highway. 90% of the time you're going to have a tailwind. I was out there today and just cruising along. It was just such a surreal feeling. You feel like you don't have a tailwind, but you're looking at your speed. You're going 25, 27, 28 miles an hour. And it's like, well, I can do this all day long. However, don't be deceived that once you get up typically about to the airport, which is about 8 to 10 miles out, you come up on a rise there, and all of a sudden the wind typically will change. You're going to get a crosswind hitting you on the kind of the Maui side, coming across from left to right. And then as you get further out, it'll come across the saddle, so you get hit on the right-hand side. I took a video of the wind out there earlier this week and sent it to John Mayfield, and I think it was probably blowing I put in the range of about 40 miles an hour. So as an athlete, you have to be prepared for that. You've got to monitor your heart rate. You've got to monitor your nutrition, monitor your gearing, and knowing you're going to hit those sections. Once you get to Waikoloa, you're definitely on the windiest part, and then you go up as you finish on Highway 19. You make a left-hand turn there, and you start your climb up to Hawaii. Hawaii earlier this week was very pleasant. It was very nice. It wasn't too windy going up. However, in my races going to Hawaii, you're definitely climbing elevation. It's a section over about 12 or 13 miles that I've experienced rainbows, double rainbows, triple rainbows, rain, sleet, hail, crosswinds, tailwinds, eye of the fog. I've seen it all up there. It's amazing how quickly it does change. However, once you do get to the top, it's always a good feeling that you reach the infamous turnarounds. Special needs bag are right there on the right-hand side, and then you start your truck back down. On the downhill, it's in the race itself. It's pretty special. The pros have already gone by the time you even get to the turnaround, and they're on their way back. But that section right there, I know in training the other day, we were close to 50 miles an hour. Which is pretty fast and kind of scary because I've experienced those rogue winds that will just come across that section and, literally take you right off your bike. But in the moment, it feels good. And then once you get down to the bottom of the hill, you make a left-hand turn and you get to this really unbelievable spot called the Pit. And the reason down there by Kauai High that it's called the Pit is that you have no airflow. And all that fun of coming down that downhill, the reality sinks in. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I've biked about 65 or 70 miles now. My legs are getting tired, and I've got no wind, and my heart rate's going up, and you're kind of down on yourself. But yeah, you turn right there, and you're heading back, and it's nice to get to Waikoloa, and then you're being hit with crosswinds, and then within 10 miles, when you get up to about 90 miles on the bike ride, those last 20 miles, it could be like being on a trainer. With the oven on and just a fan and blowing right in your face. That I've seen winds of 30 to 40 miles an hour. At that point, people are definitely fatigued. You can look at people's kits and see the salts all over them, to see the wear and tear that they've encountered over that distance. So it's nice and rewarding to get back close to the pier, but then once you get off your bike, you have something called a marathon.
So Elizabeth, in TriDot, we have our RaceX plans that tell us, here's your swim pace, here's the power you should be holding on the bike at certain parts of the course, whether you're going up a hill or whether you're on the flats. For you, transitioning onto the run course as a strong runner, how much does that RaceX plan and following it on the bike help you get started on the run?
Well, that's a great question, and I honestly wish that I had a little bit of a different answer for you on this one.
This was not a question on the script, ladies and gentlemen. This is a surprise.
Yes, yeah. I actually struggled quite a bit on the run, and for me, coming out of T2, this was the first time that I had ever stopped on a race course to say hello and hug my husband. Just because I was at a point where, some of my time,
which I'm sure Charles appreciated.
Well, true. Yes. He does talk about that, it was nice for me to actually stop for once. Usually when I'm on the run, it's all business, because I have gotten to that point and I'm racing. And usually, as not the strongest swimmer, I make up some good ground on the bike, and then it's game on for the run. And so I don't stop and say hi to my family. As much as I love them, those are precious seconds that, could be a difference maker by the finish line. But for me, I struggled a lot at the end of the bike ride. And coming out of T2, I knew that I was going to be in for a longer marathon than what I anticipated. Now, you do talk about the RaceX plan, and what was great for me there was still watching my heart rate and the heart rate caps. So even though pace at that point was going to be somewhat irrelevant, I knew that I still had to manage my energy well. And the heart rate caps that were established in that race plan were still very important for me to follow.
So, Kurt, you did such a great job walking us through the bike course.
So tell us about the Kona run. After the bike, it's just a little jog in paradise, right?
Yeah, you wish it could be. And I think, again, what I do is I call it the run, the Kona shuffle, or maybe even the crawl if you get that desperate at the end. But, what I try to do is just, again, be very mindful of what's going on. I mean, really think intuitively, be aware of everything that I've done as I get out of T2. It's the mindset. It's a grab and go. Be very, very, very cautious as you're starting on Alii Drive, because there are so many people around that want you and encourage you to run faster and faster and faster, and you're going, no, 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 no. I've got to stay in my zone too. So I'm looking at my heart rate. I'm looking at my pace. Many times you don't realize how hot it actually is or was until you start to run, and then it all sinks in. I was in the Ironman, I believe it was 2 years ago. It was probably one of the hottest Ironmans I've ever encountered. That I carried a big hand bottle with me because I knew it was going to be extremely warm. And I was going through about 20 ounces of fluid every mile or so at the aid stations and getting more aid. And I didn't have the urge to urinate till about mile 13. So you figure the air temperature is probably 95. The humidity is about 80% or 70%. The asphalt's probably about 110. And you're literally just hanging on as you go down Alii Drive to acknowledge the crowd. If you've got a hose, you can definitely spray me. I won't get mad at you. Get to the turnaround, you start to roll back. And then again, going up Polini, another little section there that your heart rate can elevate and spike instantly. Your pace really starts to drop down. So being very mindful. And then once you get past Polini, the real benefit I see is you're out on the highway. It's nice to be up there in a way because you're going to have more wind, more airflow. The real downside is you lost all that crowd. So now you're talking to yourself. And I always try to, have that positive self-talk and just, again, breaking up into small chunks, being positive, encouraging people. And then as you're continuing to go out, you almost get to the airport, and then you make this left-hand turn, and now you drop down into the energy lab. And that's sort of the place where I think you either make it or you break it, both physically and mentally. It's so incredible. I was just out there the other day and just going through just kind of that mind game of what it's like, again, in this particular training session and on race day. And it just reminded me of what happens when you're down there. There is no wind at all. So it just seems like your body's creating much more heat, especially as you're coming back out. And you have to, again, break it up into small sections to make sure that you're got plenty of ice. You're soaking yourself with sponges. Once you can get back out of the energy lab, it's like, whoa, paradise, because the wind starts to blow again. And then once you make your right-hand turn, you're back on the Queen Cam Highway. At that point, the mindset is, hey, I'm running to Kona. I can walk after this race. I can walk. I can do a 20-minute recovery walk. I can walk the next day, but I'm not walking right now. And you just cannot give in. And as you're coming back, every step you're taking, you're getting closer to your goal. About mile 23 and a half, you're coming up that last long stretch where, all of us have seen it on Facebook and NBC where, that's where a lot of the pros, they make it or break it right there. It's a nice little incline. And then you come down, Polini. So, your quads are on fire. They are bursting. It's like fire alarms are going off because there's so much smoke coming off your quads, and they're burning and they're hot. But all of a sudden they're telling you, hey, you're almost there. Mike Riley's waiting for you. You can do this. And, you make your left-hand turn, and that last mile, it never seems like a mile. It seems like it's 2. It takes forever. But right at the very end where you make your right-hand turn on Alii there, you've got about 600 yards, and it's like, whoa. That's where you just take it all in, and they have everything so laid out that there's people there from all throughout the world, and the vibe is good. And all that pain and torture and agony that you went through at that moment, you're not feeling that. You're saying, hey, this thing is going to pull me in, and I'll be one of many, many people that have done this event on this course, and it's something that you truly do cherish. And to get down to, the last 20 or 30 yards, that's like, wow. All that training, all the sacrifices, it's well worth it. So it's good. And then they'll say, you are an Ironman. And that's great for Mike Riley.
There is no race in our sport that hypes up the finish line experience as much as Kona. And everyone that crosses that line says it lives up to the hype. Tell me what you're feeling as you're crossing that Kona finish line and celebrating.
Yeah, that is definitely the ultimate. So in trying to be very descriptive, I think for every person, their feelings of what they experience when they're approaching any finish line is maybe different than mine. I think for me, because I go back, so far on this course that, it's like, wow, 38 years ago. Yeah, I remember that. It was like right there by that big tree. Some of the props have changed a little bit, but it was that same feeling to say, first of all, just finishing any Ironman is a significant accomplishment. I think doing it in Kona is raising the bar even higher. I think if you've had an incredible day at Kona, that's like that, you've nailed it. You've arrived at least on that race, and the feeling is so overwhelming in a positive way. I think it's transformational. It's life changing. I don't think people are quite the same once they cross that line. At least for me, I knew, what it has done for me in my life of just crossing that finish line at Kona. But it's being able to say, hey, I went to Kona. I took it all in. I couldn't have done it without my team and without all the volunteers out there and just going across that line. It's really, if I look back on my life and I have to say what's been the most moving things in my life, from getting married to seeing my children being born, that finish in Kona, I have to put that in the top 5.
Elizabeth, for you, finishing for the first time last year, what was that stretch to the finish line like?
So that stretch to the finish line was, a combination of joy because it's here. Like, this is that moment. And Kurt talks about, how it's almost like slow motion. And I would agree that whatever speed you're going, all of a sudden you're just taking in everything around you and realizing that this is kind of the culmination of a long-term journey to get there. I remember, approaching that red carpet and being excited to see the finish line. There's always a little bit of relief there as well, because you never know what the day is going to hand you.
So true.
And, at the same point, not wanting it to be over, that I was excited to get to the finish line. But at the same point, it's like, oh man, like this was just an epic journey, an extraordinary experience of a day. And you don't want it to end either.
Now, Kurt, for our listeners out there who maybe, they've been racing triathlons, they've been getting better, maybe they've done an Ironman or two, and they want so badly to qualify for Kona. They want that to be the next step in their journey as a triathlete. What would be your advice to them today on how to take that next step in their training to get fast enough to qualify?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always the question. I think as people look at training, there's several options. As everyone knows, I'm a firm believer in our product, meaning the TriDot plan. I think our system is unbeatable. I think we're in a class of our own. I've used it for the past 3 years as an athlete and a coach, and I know what it's done for me, that I've still had continuous improvement. And again, I'm not in the 40 to 45 age group, and I'm a few years out, but I know that it definitely it gets results. So I think, again, trusting the process, following the plan is key. I think also just mapping out maybe a 3-year plan for your races of how you might want to get there. If you're very, very close to qualifying, it's good to plan out your seasons. Pick races where you know that you're going to have a higher chance of qualifying that fit your style. In other words, if you do well in heat, then pick a hot race. If you're good in climbing, pick a hilly bike course like, say, Lake Placid. Also, the other thing I found as a real bonus is networking. I think the I Am TriDot Facebook page has been very, very beneficial because it is a community. In addition to that, I think there's no doubt that everyone needs a coach. John Mayfield is my coach, and John has done great things for me as a Sherpa. To be out there on race day, to touch base with me on, various issues that I've encountered or questions that I might have. So getting a coach that has a firm interest in you and a good fit, I think that's money in the bank. It's a great return on your investment. That's another angle to take. I think also, if you're not really close to qualifying, I think, and you know that, hey, it's going to be a longer road, that legacy program, I think that's good. You've got to plan out your budgets. You've got to plan out your time. to say that Kona could be great. I think the other thing, if at all possible, I think to either come here and see this event would beyond motivate anybody, because you're in the moment and you're here with everyone. All the giants in the sport are here. That's another perspective. The other thing to do too is keep in mind that you can always do Kona. You can do it unofficially. There's nothing out there. I haven't seen any signs out there on the roads to say that you can't do the Ironman. You can actually come a week before. You can do the 2.4 mile swim. You can get some support. Do the 112 mile bicycle ride. Go all the way out to Alii. Stop right there at the pier. Put on your running shorts. Run down Alii Drive. That turnaround point is easy to find. You can go out there to the Energy Lab. You can go ahead and, do a happy dance there at the pier when you're all done. That way you are kind of unofficially an Ironman to do that. You've done that. But at the same time, understand that there are so many people that have their stories and how they got to Kona, and it can be done. And I think for some reason, if you didn't get there, maybe it just wasn't meant to be. But I have seen so many people that maybe have a lot of self-doubt. And then when I can sit down with them and actually map it out, I think it's well worth it to do it from that angle. And I notice I'm here just watching people that they've got their families here. They're taking pictures. They've got their T-shirts on. It's huge. And I think, again, you're contributing to yourself. You're investing in yourself, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think it's a really, really good thing because you're in a good group. Everyone's very, very supportive. You're investing in your physical health, your mental well-being. And again, it's doing this for as long as you possibly can.
Kurt, thanks so much for taking us on a journey through the Kona racecourse with you today. We will let you get back to enjoying beautiful Hawaii and preparing for your race.
All right. Thank you again.
Well, that's it for today. I hope all of you listening feel like you've gotten a feel for the Kona experience. A big thank you to Coach Kurt Madden and Coach Elizabeth James for sharing their stories with us. If you are an athlete racing Kona this year, know that all of us at TriDot are cheering you on. And for those of you who are working on lowering those splits, dreaming of the Kona start line, we hope to see you there next year. If you haven't discovered the impact of training with TriDot, I encourage you to head to TriDot.com and check us out. TriDot users improve an average of 3.2 times more than non-users. With TriDot, you can achieve more performance improvement and up to 30% less training time, all while lowering your chance for injury. I personally started training with TriDot this time last year. Within months, I was swimming stronger, had raised my bike FTP to an all-time high, and had PR'd my 5K. Now, I'm still working to get on Kurt and Elizabeth's level, but TriDot is helping me make my way there one workout at a time. As you watch the World Championships live from Hawaii, I encourage you to track our good friend Kurt Madden and cheer him on. He is bid number 610. Enjoy the race and happy training.